to the Catshed Singles Club with me, your host, Simon Vincent. Thank you for joining me once again in a week where we had new singles released from arguably, is it arguably? No, it's definitely the two biggest female artists in the world, Rihanna and Beyonce. Beyonce, of course, ahead of her performance at the Super Bowl this evening. It was also a week in music in which we learned of the sad death of Maurice White from the band Earth, Wind and Fire after his battle with Parkinson's disease. Their music will leave an unbelievable legacy in anybody who loves funk and soul music. This week in my world, I've been listening to a whole ton of stuff once again, and as always, I've whittled it down to 5 selections for you. We've got some trip hop, which pretty much means it's either Massive Attack or Tricky, right? Do any other trip hop bands exist? Really? We got some country, we got some electro, we got some R&B. Suffice to say, it's gonna be a good one, so strap yourself in. Here we go. Okay, so let's kick things off with my first choice this week, and this is Dawn Richard and the track Not Above That. So quick recap on the career of Dawn Richard so far. In 2004, she's in a TV program, like a making of the band, kind of a talent show kind of TV program with Puff Daddy, Sean Puffy Coombs, P. Diddy Money, whatever his name is. And she's in this program and she forms part of the band Danity Kane, which appeared to have a pretty sort of short-lived career. I'll be honest with you, I didn't really listen to their stuff. I can't really pretend to know anything about them. But then she releases 2 really interesting, different, intelligent, incredible, themed albums. So she launches with Golden Heart, which is still kind of a poppy record, but has elements in it of the kind of production and the way that she's going to go, and vocally her melodies are kind of going all over the place in this kind of really great and interesting way that you don't tend to hear from a lot of R&B singers, I don't think, nowadays. Then she comes in with last year's Blackheart, and that is, as the title would suggest, a much darker record, but really kind of interesting and deep and textured and layered. This song, Not Above That, comes from her new album, which is called The Red Era. It starts off with this really kind of atmospheric, dark, quiet, kind of sinister kind of a bass line that's kind of running through the track. She's doing that thing with her vocal that reminds me a little bit of like The Weeknd on his early mixtapes, where there were big sections in songs where The Weeknd would just kind of be over like a layer of just kind of noise, and he'd be kind of just rolling these different melodies all over the place in this really kind of odd, sort of unusual Arabic kind of a way. Then as the song builds, then you start to get a bit of tempo into the thing, and you start getting the hand claps, and the claps start going. And then in that kind of a house music kind of a way, they start kind of doubling up, and that starts building the tension and everything. And then you get the drop. Now, we're not talking about like some bro step drop here. We're talking about a really offbeat, syncopated, aggressive, but still kind of mellow, kind of a dubsteppy sort of a feel, and the whole time her voice is sweet and mellow, running over the whole thing as well, and it makes for this really nice little kind of counterpoint between the two parts, the music and her vocal. Lyrically, the song's kind of really empowered, and actually after last year's Blackheart, it is kind of interesting to hear her talking a bit more positively, being a bit more positive. This album far from being an album about kind of needing to put armor on and be kind of angry and negative about relationships as in the kind of previous two albums. Now she's feeling empowered. Now she's saying, you know, I'm going to call you up at 4 a.m, and because I'm not above that. And she's kind of listening to her own desires and where she wants to go with this relationship that she's in. The production on the track's done by Machine Drum, and as we know, that's just like a recipe for success in everybody's book. All in all, it's just the perfect record to get the party started with. That's Dawn Richard and Not Above That. Moving on, we're going to bring the tempo down just a little bit, and this is the provocatively named band Wet and the song You're the Best. So that was Wet and You're the Best, and the most important thing you need to know about Wet is that they have a website which is kanyewet.biz. Oh, I love them. But no, seriously, so this is a Brooklyn-based trio headed up by Kelley and Massive. The band's been releasing EPs since around about October 2013, and this is off their latest album called Don't You. And the track starts with Sutrao on her own, just kind of doing this a cappella, almost Imogen Heap hide-and-seek-esque intro. Where the song really goes into its own is when the guitar chords come in for the second verse. And that guitar just kind of adds a layer of melody underneath it, which just kind of starts to frame the whole track. Moving into the third verse, and this is all before the chorus, by the way. Then we start getting a bit of a drum beat underneath, and the guitars are kind of starting to become a bit picked in this kind of almost U2 The Edge kind of way. And then the song just blossoms into the chorus, and it's here where Zutrao's lyrics really start to come to the fore, and this is where the song really sells it for me, because so far what we've had in the song lyric wise is really kind of fragile. She talks a lot about feeling lonely in the presence of a loved one, being concerned that he's maybe thinking of somebody else when he's with her. And when it gets to the chorus, that's when this kind of melting pot of defensiveness and insecurity and vulnerability, but also a little bit of optimism as well, they all kind of come in together and finish with this vocal about maybe we should just quit while we're ahead. And it's at that point that the bottom just drops out of the song, and it's just beautifully poetic the way the music reflects the vocal, and we start to build again right from the bottom. The whole track is this melancholy mix of kind of layer upon layer upon layer of vocals and guitars and sounds, none of which seem to add a great deal of volume to the track. They just add this extra layer of longing and yearning to the vocal, which is a wonderful vehicle for carrying the whole thing along. Who does it sound like? Well, I've already kind of mentioned Imogen Heap. Musically, there's some elements of kind of like London Grammar, maybe a bit of Banks, maybe a little bit of Washed Out even. So once again, that track's called You're the Best. It's by the band Wet, and it's off their debut album Don't You, which is out now. Third up, let's go for this track. It's by the producer Flume, and he's featuring Vince Staples and the Aussie singer Kuchka, and this is the track Smoke and Retribution.
Can't help but think about the situation. Trying to get to sleep, but my mind's racing. Only got each other we can turn to. Lying here, I know they'll never break you, break.
You and me, nobody else. If it can't be that way, then I just be all by myself. I love the way you stay away from me, you make me melt. Those nights you used to come and stay with me, replaying in my memory. It's no such thing as meant to be. That's fine, 'cause you so fine. The way you walk and talk, the way you leave your mark, just can't break you
So
from
that's Smoke and Retribution by Harley Edward Stretton, better known by his stage name of Flume. Stretton's pretty well known in his home country of Australia, and getting a little bit better known in this country, particularly since he released his last track, Never Be Like You, which I know is playlisted on a lot of mainstream radio stations over here. He's an artist that I first got into back in 2012 when he released the song On Top featuring the rapper T-Shirt, and this is him collaborating with another rapper once again, which for me is probably where his strength lies. This time he's with Vince Staples, who was responsible for the really highly critically acclaimed album Summertime '06 from last year. So what becomes very clearly evident very quickly on this track is that Flume is really trying to develop for himself his own idiosyncratic style of kind of glitchy, offbeat, syncopated, linear drum grooves, kind of funk. And he does it really, really well on this track. On the previous track, Never Be Like You, it was a little bit too stop-starty for me. It never kind of felt like it ever quite got going. But in this track, Vince Staples' flow, for me, knits it all together just that little bit more nicely before it goes into Kuchka's sweet, kind of alien-like sound on the kind of choruses. Staples himself is crisper, more focused, more aggressive, I think, than on anything on his own album, actually. Unfortunately, it doesn't ever quite have the hook that it needs or kind of progress enough as a track to really kind of become a solid gold hit, but it really is doing something very different, I think, with the electronic genre. I imagine this is the perfect song to get prepared for a fight to. Obviously, I'm kind of way too skinny to ever know what that was like or care, but I imagine that is the case. So once again, that's Flume and Vince Staples featuring Kuchka and the track Smoke and Retribution. Moving on, I'm going to take things to a slightly kind of country-esque twist now for my fourth choice this week. It's by the artist Charles Kelley, and this is a track called Leaving Nashville.
Oh, one day you're the king, the next you're not. Handshakes and whiskey shots, to picking up the pieces you lost of yourself. Well, I ain't never leaving Nashville. 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 I ain't never leaving this town.
Okay, so that's Charles Kelley and the track Leaving Nashville, and I'm going to start with an apology to Charles Kelley because I heard the first single off this, or maybe the second single I think it is, Just Keep Dancing Around This, a couple of weeks ago, and I really fancied putting it on this show, but I lost my nerve because it kind of combines Rumours era Fleetwood Mac MOR with latter day John Mayer vocal harmonies and guitar tones, and it's really sweet and cool and sunny and smoky, but I lost my nerve and decided it was a little bit too kind of kitsch and nice and sweet to feature on the show. Plus I realised when I looked into it that Charles Kelley is a guy from Lady Antebellum, or Lady A as he calls it. But when I heard this track with its kind of bourbon soaked Ryan Adams vocal and honky-tonk piano and mournful lyrics about never being able to get out of the town that you're from, I just couldn't help myself. It starts with just the piano and the vocals with some kind of root notes on the bass as Kelley kind of reminisces about girls with dreams and throwing up in parking lots and other kind of small town provincial stuff that kind of, I think, resonates with all of us on some sort of level. And then as it goes into the second verse, that's when we start to get the cellos coming in with this kind of mournful underpinning of the track. You can tell he's got a, you know, Grammy award-winning backdrop because the song structure is very pop. It kind of first verse, second verse builds, reach a kind of chorus, drops out, then builds itself all back up again, and it's at that point that it really reaches its climax with the little bit that you heard in that clip there, where the strings are going full pelt. His vocal strength and the melodies in his vocal really come to the fore, and of course as soon as he mutters those magic words at the end, you know, I ain't never leaving this town, that's when the track drops out again, and we fade out till close. It's the final track of his debut solo album, which was released on Friday of this week, and it feels like the perfect way to finish off an album. So once again, that's Charles Kelley and the track Leaving Nashville, and that's my fourth choice for this week. And last but certainly not least, this is my fifth and final choice for this week. No spotlight choice this week, they're all new tracks, all released this week. This is Massive Attack, and it's the track Ritual Spirits. So we have the return of trip-hop juggernaut Massive Attack from Bristol, UK. I've been a fan of Massive Attack since 1998 when I first heard Angel off the album Mezzanine played on an advert, I think, with David Beckham kicking a ball through a hole in a wall or something. It was kind of a bit surreal. So, massive fan of Massive Attack. Their album 100th Window from 2003 is still one of my favourite albums to listen to on headphones. And this week they returned with an EP called Ritual Spirit, from which this is the title single. And it's featuring East London singer Azikel, who's not a guy that I knew of before a great deal. The reason I chose that section of the song to play is because one of the things I really love most about Massive Attack is the way that they layer their music. And on this track they really lay that bare for you and allow you to hear it as it builds. And it kind of starts with this guitar line that's really reminiscent for me of Dream Brother from the Jeff Buckley album Grace, which is, by the way, my favourite album of all time. And what comes next is the kind of heartbeat kick drum, and it gives it a bar or two of that, and then it comes in with this drone-like, really deep, heavy bass underneath that. Finally, it adds on the tribal drums on the top of it, and then Ezekiel's voice as it kind of hovers over the top. And the whole time, up to this point, we're like a minute and a half in, and the whole time they haven't even changed chord, like, at all. The track itself is sinister and meditative, and really wouldn't sound out of place next to something like, for example, Inertia Creeps off Mezzanine. I must say the other three tracks on the album involve guest musicians that I know an awful lot more about. Roots Maneuver, Young Fathers, Tricky, all artists that I know already and have a great deal of time and respect for. But Azikel himself has this really soulful tone of voice, and I think that really works with the darkness of the Massive Attack track underneath. So yeah, the whole EP is really worth giving a go. It's called Ritual Spirit. This is the title track off it. It's Massive Attack, and that is my fifth and final choice for this week. So that's the end of the show again for this week. Thank you very much for joining me. Next week it's Valentine's Day on Sunday, so if I can get out into the shed for a couple of hours, hopefully I'll have another 5 tracks to review for you then. You can subscribe to the playlist for this week's episode by clicking on the links below, and if you like what you hear, please make sure you subscribe. It makes me feel good and makes me continue to do more of these episodes. So in the meantime, take care, big love, over and out.